We're going to talk about what a loop is, and more importantly, but this is a little deeper, what actually makes a loop worth trusting. Because, with AI, we have to trust AI. If we don't trust AI, then, maybe we shouldn't be using it. I know that's a little bit of a deep statement that I'm starting with. But anyway, also, I think a big piece of this for me that I've seen when talking to people about loops in private is that folks don't really realize they're running loops, even though they are. And then I will talk about the three loops that I've built and use myself regularly, and then how to write your own. All right. So stepping back for a sec, what actually is a loop? And this sort of somewhat fancy diagram, not so fancy, it kind of explains it. You basically have to set a desired outcome, which we would call a goal. So you have an outcome, a goal, and you also need to set how you'll know it's met. Because if you have a goal and you don't know how you're going to get there, how are you going to make a loop that actually gets you there? Yeah, exactly. You don't. Uh, and then basically you prompt an agent and then look at the result. You review the result and iterate if the desired outcome isn't met. And then you keep looping until you hit the outcome you wanted. And the you here, there's a reason I use the word you. It's actually not you, it's actually the AI that's doing it. So I think that's a really important point here, which is the AI is actually doing a bunch of this with honestly not as much effort from you as would normally be required. So that's kind of a description of a loop. But of course, we should talk about really what a loop really is, because there's a lot of confusion about the difference between a loop and a bunch of these other terms, which I'll go through, but also an automation. So a lot of people think that a loop already implies that it's going to run on a schedule or it's automated. That's not true. Loops are actually just meant to control repeated work that an AI does autonomously towards a verifiable result. But once that result is hit, the loop is complete. And then maybe with a cron job or something, it can start again. So I'm just going to go through these 7 sort of definitions that are not loops to help contextualize how this all fits in. So prompts are actually, when you prompt, you're asking for a reply, or what I would say is an output. Cron jobs, if you folks have heard about that, they come from engineering, but they basically let you run something on some cadence, like every 10 minutes do X. So in the case of loops, a cron can run that loop for you. But then once a loop is done, it's done. That's the sort of important distinction that I see so many people just miss when they start thinking about or even try to toy with what a loop actually is. And again, I don't fault anyone for that at this point. All the terminology can be confusing. One of the reasons I really wanted to do this session on loops. Next, everyone knows what skills are, I hope, but either way, they help you do things again that you might have already done and got to a great output. So they kind of preserve reusable methods. Workflows, those are sequence steps. So these are things that need to happen in some sequence. Agents, I like to say they act through tools. So you have an agent that goes and gets your Google Docs and does X, Y, Z, A, B, C. I can go into a more deeper discussion on agents, but just to kind of put a pin in it on this one, the way I think of an agent is it's what we're now calling harnesses. So it's like a harness and a model or a set of models. And then evals, which I think folks know by now, they are meant to measure performance. So how well does an AI or multiple AIs do against an input and an output? And then MCP servers are kind of the way that we've all created a standard around connecting systems. So when you see connector, there's a high chance that it's actually using the MCP spec. But these days, I think we don't really use that terminology in the products as much as we used to. It's just a connector. All right, so that's what a loop is and how it's different from scheduled tasks or skills and all these things. So there's a very important distinction. If at the end, and I know anyone that's been here knows, we'll go off at the end on Q&A, and I'll take as many as I can get. So if you have questions about this or are still confused about it, about the difference between a loop and an automation, or what I would say are scheduled tasks or skills or any of this stuff, please ask questions. This is a topic I get kind of a lot of questions about and really want folks to understand what this means, because that'll help you figure out all the rest of this. So loop essentially has four parts. It's not very hard to figure out. It's very clear. Some of the terminology might not be something you're familiar with, but it's got a goal, uh, expected outcome. It's got a check. So this is a way to check if what the AI is doing in the loop actually is validated against the goal that you have. And then a revision would be if it finds something, uh, it needs to decide that it needs to make a revision or that it needs to stop. So it's just a way to say, okay, you prompt, you get a result, you review the result, which is a check. If it meets the desired outcome, it stops. That's the stop condition. If not, does a revision and goes through that loop again. So that's essentially how it works. And, I will say this probably a lot of times, but I said it already a few. A loop does not mean it's just going to keep going. A loop means it keeps going until an outcome that you've defined is completed. That's why I like to say that a loop is actually not an automation. It is just a way for AI to get it right, is another way to think about it. So this is one of my funnest ones, but this is basically where you're already using loops, whether you know it or not. So essentially, the way I like to say it is every time you tell AI to try again, you're running the loop yourself. So if you read an output, didn't like it, found some gap, or wanted it to fix it or ask again, you would do that. For example, early on, when I had AI writing content, whether it's emails or public content or even internal notes or anything like that, it would have an M dash. So then I would say no M dashes. And then it would still have an M dash the next time. Then I would say, hey, please count all the M dashes, remove all the M dashes, rewrite the words. Then maybe it would get it right. This is a perfect thing for a loop, which is keep going until there's no M dashes at all. So that's just a very small, I think, common example many of us tried to go through. And then at the end of the day, something to not forget is you're still the one judging the work and deciding when it's good based on the desired outcome you got. The reason that part's important is because that's essentially how you're normally using AI. So essentially, all of us, if we've ever fixed an output from a prompt, we've essentially run at least one cycle of a loop. We're the human running the loop. So what does that mean? Well, that means that basically a loop is something where you take the human out of a lot of the process around it so that it can go on its own till it gives you the desired outcome. And then you come back in and look at it and say, was this good enough? So essentially what you're doing is you're having the agent run the check and revision steps, as long as you've obviously defined the goal and the stop condition of when to just stop. And the key here is that you're not steering the work at every pass. You're not even looking at it. The AI is just essentially doing it itself. Okay. So you're probably wondering, okay, why do we care? Why does this matter? Like, why do I need this? What's going on? So the simplest way to think about it is that this lets the AI run without you having to go in and monitor it all the time, which is something a lot of us that try to get AI to run automatically would run into, which is I got to keep stepping in. Got it. Okay. So it's actually a repeatable way to get good work out of AI. So you get better quality results when you use loops, as long as you're able to define all the things within the loop. You can run more agents in parallel. So if you see engineers talking about loops and things like that, these are the reasons they like it. And, last but not least, you get the outcomes you want because you have defined what that outcome is. Now, I'll pause here real quick because the next part of this is I'm going to get into 3 different examples of my own loops that I love and like to use. So the thing that a lot of us were doing when we worked with AI was giving AI an example. And my first boss in my life, my only boss in my life, told me at one point when I was complaining about things, hey, they don't know what great looks like, or they don't know what good looks like. And so one of the key things about loops that I think is lost when people just think about the tactical of things looping and all the stuff I just talked about is actually because you're focused on a desired outcome, a goal, you're actually having to define what great looks like or what good looks like. And that's the secret to loops, in my opinion, which is it is the hack, so to speak, to get us to tell AI what great looks like and then have AI meet that mark. that's kind of the way I would describe it and why I'm so excited about loops because these were things I was trying to do. I would give AI an example and have it try to either codify it or turn it into something that can be repeated. Now with loops, there's a sort of language, I would say, to all of this. So before I get into the examples, I kind of wanted to, because I know some folks had questions earlier too that I answered, but I kind of want to get into real quick, like, where does this come from? Like, people are going to ask me, oh, was I doing it before? Things like that. So a while ago, and someone mentioned this in the chat, but there was something called Ralph loops. You can look them up, and that was created as a way for everyone to sort of start doing this process. Then more recently, I think it got even more popular because engineers and folks like that we're starting to adopt loops more and more and more. And then people started talking about it. And now here we are talking about loops. But all these loops that I'm going to share, I never called them loops. The bots that we use didn't call them loops. We were just doing them because we thought that was how we would get great outputs from AI. So all of these were actually abstracted out prior to Ralph loops or any of that stuff coming out and they were abstracted out of processes we were using in our own workflows. So it's really awesome. What I'm seeing a lot is that things that many of us, some of us, were doing, like let's say on the edges of AI not too long ago or maybe a while ago, are turning into language that we all can use, and that's why I'm very adamant about sharing that language and explaining it. And I thought this is a really good time to go deeper into that. Anyway, so first loop. And I wanted to start with this one because this is on the semi-technical side, and we'll just give an example of something really useful on any software for any product development and software development when you're coordinating between code and non-code, so to speak. I would have said engineers and non-engineers, but that's not quite the case anymore. So let's say it's non-code and code. So what is this loop? So this is what I call a ticket to PR ready loop. And it essentially starts with any kind of cluttered input. It could be a ticket, bug, report, customer complaint, whatever. And then what we're able to do is essentially this loop will reproduce the failure. It will confirm the root cause with whatever evidence it can get. And then it keeps the fix very small as possible. And then essentially it hands back PR, which is a pull request for anyone that doesn't know. And if you want to learn more about GitHub, it's in the library on Hiten.com, a whole session on GitHub for non-engineers. And so basically what it is it essentially hands over a reviewable package of code, a pull request that is for fixing this thing. So if you've ever done software development, tickets are made or complaints or bugs or whatever come in, and then we have to go do a bunch of stuff about it. Usually the bunch of stuff that needs to happen is identify how to reproduce it if you can, and then also go, engineers would then take it as a handoff of whatever you produce in the ticket and go write the code. So this compresses all that down. So actually the AI is writing the code. The AI is also trying to reproduce what happened. And you folks might be wondering, hey, this sounds like a dream, or hey, you're full of it. This is the exact process we use on Typeahead. If you folks don't know the product, it's typeahead.ai that I work on with an engineer. We are just essentially me and him working on that product. And I'm essentially part-time. He's the main person on it. He's an engineer. And we've time and time again used this loop with the bot that we have. Our bot sits in Slack and it's able to do this right from Slack. I don't believe we even use Linear over there very heavily, and all of our systems are in Slack. So these loops are really helpful because I can just literally say, customer emailed, this is the bug, go after it. And the system literally goes after it until it has a PR that's ready for Sam, who works with me over there. So this is literally something we are using on a multi-weekly, if not daily basis as a loop, which essentially prevents us from doing all that work of taking a bug and even writing the code to fix the bug. It's massive, a set of improvements, super high ROI. All right, loop number 2. So some of this is some of the sort of nerdy but awesome stuff, in my opinion, that I've created. So this is essentially research to artifact. I hate the word artifact, but AI supposedly understands the word, so I'm going to use the word artifact. It just means file, document, image, what have you, something that the AI produces. So what this loop does, it will almost like pin down a question and sort of research. So you could almost start with almost any kind of input, and then it takes the sort of strongest inputs, sorts the signal from noise, surfaces any tension and all that kind of stuff, almost like you had multiple AIs going after something. And then it gives what I would call like something that helps you make a decision. So this is a way to make memos or a recommendation or things like that. Think of this as a more general purpose loop, and I will give an example in a second. But the whole purpose of it is to create an artifact that helps you make a decision, not like take research and just do a massive research dump. The reason I like this loop is because I use it quite a bit when I do a bunch of research. Let's say I'm writing a piece of content, I'll do a bunch of research, but then I need to make it help make decisions about what do we do with this for the purpose that I had. So, really good example here, and use this for sort of a decision making. So you can read it, but essentially, I have the loop, and I prompted it like this, and this is what it really is. Because I added as its own skill, I went ahead and can kind of tag it there and do slash research to artifact, and then I can ask the question: should we add a second live session each week? And essentially, there's a lot of detail here, including like some of the metrics and things like that. And then basically, it gave me an entire output about the decision. And as you can see, it says exactly what the recommendation is. I can believe it or not or whatever, but it just, it's AI. But I believe it because I gave it the context. I ran it through the loop. It thought about it. So in a way, for me, this one helps AI think about raw material and turn it into something that's digestible and usable. That's kind of the main goal of it. But essentially, the TLDR is don't do a second solo live session. I don't know if I will or not, but either way, the artifact kind of was helpful in essentially helping with that decision. So it's almost like a decision making tool, but it can do a lot more as well in terms of helping you take raw research and turn it into something actually usable, readable, and that actually helps you do something. Okay, so that one was research to artifact. Now this is artifact to skill. So what this one does is, let's say I got AI or even non AI to do something great, and I want to make it repeatable. So this skill would say, let's say there was a great research report or an analysis of something. Let's say an analysis of a launch someone did, or an analysis of some new feature that we're building and the research from it or something like that. And I really like the output that was produced. For example, on the above example, if I really liked the structure of that decision making document or artifact that was built, I could take that and then I would give it with this loop, and then it would just keep going until it made the skill repeatable. Because in order to make the skill reusable, it has to be good and map to that great example that I gave it. So it sort of decides how to figure out what made that artifact good. Then it writes up a reusable skill, and it essentially tests it on another case on its own. And then it when it feels like it's done, I'll get that skill. So I went ahead and basically did this just like I did last time, where I sort of added it as a skill in Claude, and it's been packaged, easy to tag into a conversation. And so the artifact that I'm mentioning is a Notion doc. It's an example of a successful live session web page layout. So all of you came through my website and had to put in your email, or you already had, and so you just hit a button. But basically, that content for that page is kind of what we're creating, right? And so we wanted to make it easier for us to create the next ones. Now that we have about 15 of them or so on the site, and so then we took the document from it, which is essentially the copy for that page, and gave it to Claude. You'll also notice we're using the Notion MCP here, or the Notion connector, because we're connected to Notion. And then from there, it went ahead and essentially uh, created the skill for me. And now I could use this skill the next time I want to create one of these sessions. And of course, just like everything else with the skill and all that kind of stuff, I can edit it. I can change it up. If I made the loop, I can even improve the loop if the loop's not good enough at doing this. I can even take that loop and make a specific loop in order to create this type of skill or what have you. So tons of stuff you can do here, but these are the three examples that I find myself using very regularly. Okay, so you're probably wondering, okay, and you know what loops are, you've seen some of my loops. I've talked about how to make them as well. So here's how you find out more about useful loops. All of these 3 loops are in this library. There's a library built by a gentleman named Matthew Berman. He's a media person. He's on YouTube, talks about AI a lot. I join him every now and then on his live sort of show every Friday as well. And he started building a library for loops because I think he got excited about loops as well. And so you can look at a ton of loops here. I think it'll give you a lot of clarity on all different use cases besides the 3 that I showed. And again, my loops are all here as well. You can find them there without a problem. Just type in the name of the loop or even probably my name and you should be able to find it. Uh, okay, so what do you do today? Well, you can try the 3 loops I shared. You can also look in that library and grab another one that might be interesting for you. And then just pick one task you keep redoing with AI and then turn it into your own loop. So now I didn't get into like the full blown, this is how you make a loop and all that, because the easiest way to make a loop is to, once you get sort of some of this going, is to point it at the loop library and just say, there's a bunch of loops here. I want to make a loop for X. And then you can make a loop. And you can even make a skill to make a loop like I did, where it's artifact to skill, which essentially could be an artifact to a loop skill, which I haven't got to yet. But that's a whole nother one for making loops. But I haven't seen anything like as a skill to make loops. I think, all of you are here, and I will say that we are all early on loops from what I can tell. But I'm glad that folks are really interested in the topic and turned it up.